Hello and welcome to the Bot Box. 262 episodes this episode. Well, it was episode 156, and the subject of that episode was Magnetar, a friendly drum spinner that made the grand final of Series 10 of Robot Wars. Why is that important? We're talking about its predecessor this week. Anyway, Pulsar is a little black box with a wedge at one end and a very unfriendly drum spinner, which, as per tradition with spinners, happened to have a very loud death hum, like compared to sirens. It was that loud. Lovely. Pulsar made its debut in Series 8 of Robot Wars, landing in Heat E, where it drew lobster-themed Flipper Thermidor 2, dragon-themed Grabber Chompalot, and horizontal bar spinner Ironside 3. Get used to hearing that name, you're going to be hearing it a lot. Pulsar was the last robot to enter the fray, but God nearly hit from Ironside 3 and spent quite a bit of the early part of the fight out of focus, but it made its presence felt via that death hum. Pulsar did manage to land a blow on Ironside 3, but ended up going around in circles because Pulsar had lost one side of its drive, thanks to said early hit from Ironside 3. Oh dear. Out of fear of Pulsar, Ironside 3 and Chompalot stayed well clear of the, very unwell drum spinner. Thermidor 2 was just toast. Lobster toast. Anyway, Ironside 3 and Chompalot, they fought amongst themselves. Ironside 3 hit Pulsar when it had the chance, and Chompalot engaged Pulsar in a pushing war before Ironside 3 opened the pit. Chompalot nearly drove in the pit before trying to get Pulsar in there as time ran out on the fight. Chompalot did not get Pulsar into the pit, so the judges were called in. Going through from that fight with Chompalot and Ironside 3. That meant Pulsar was out. However, we're not done with Series 8. Nope, as there was a plot twist. And this is the only time I'll say this. This plot twist took the form of a fire-breathing dragon. Basically, to get back to the sensible, more serious side of this, Chompalot took a lot of damage in that first fight. It got patched up for the its first fight in the round-robin stages, but damage to Chompalot was, again, severe, and this time it included damage to their lipo batteries, which caught fire. Hence, fire-breathing dragon. And as a result of the lipo fire, it was basically damaged. It was too much for Chompalot to be able to repair in the short time they'd have to repair Chompalot in. So, Chompalot withdrew. So, that left the judges to decide on who to give a second chance to, and Pulsar was the robot that was chosen to have that second chance. Thermidor 2 didn't do anything in the fight. Pulsar was thus the obvious choice for a replacement. So that meant that, yes, Pulsar was back in the round-robin stages, but they would be starting at a major disadvantage, having no points and only 2 fights to get any amount of points in. Basically, they needed 2 knockouts. The first of their fights was against Flipper Beast. Beast went over to Pulsar early on, but Pulsar fed Beast a kill lot and Beast ran off. Pulsar then drove into a wall and delivered 2 massive hits to Beast, taking it out. Next up was Ironside 3. Pulsar chased Ironside 3 early on before hitting Ironside 3 so hard it turned upside down. Now Ironside 3 had a self-righting problem it was too slow. Not helped by the fact that Pulsar sent Ironside 3 into a wall and then fed Ironside 3 to Sir Kilowog, who picked Ironside 3 up, held it aloft, and dropped it on its wheels. This was not Sir Kilowog's finest hour. Anyway, Pulsar ended up with mobility issues, and Ironside 3 pushed Pulsar into the pit and fell in themselves. So, you'd think that's Pulsar out, right? Pulsar had already KO'd Ironside 3. It had been immobile for longer than 10 seconds, and cease had not been called. It should have. And the judges ruled it as a KO in Pulsar's favour. So instead of it being Pulsar the one going out, it was Ironside 3 going out. So that got Pulsar through to the heat final to face sword-wielding Axelbot Gabriel. The robot Gabriel, obviously. Gabriel was also the robot that caused the damage to Chompalot that caused its withdrawal, so Dragon Slayer? Pulsar could not reach the main part of Gabriel, which had the important stuff in, because it was far too high up for Pulsar to hit. It was far too high up for most robots to hit. But what Pulsar could hit was Gabriel's wheels, and managed to take some of the tread off. Of course, Gabriel landed some blows on Pulsar too, and after one hit Pulsar had on Gabriel, Pulsar stopped right outside Sir Kilowog's corner. But Pulsar got away just in time and hit Gabriel again, sending it straight to Sir Kilowog, who used Gabriel to open the pit. Pulsar hit Gabriel some more, but stopped for a second time. Gabriel hit Pulsar some more, which looked like Gabriel was trying to knight Pulsar. Of course, Sir Kilowog tried to roost Pulsar. Pulsar got free, Gabriel attacked Sir Kilowog, and Pulsar stopped again, so Gabriel could hit Pulsar some more. Once again, looking like it was trying to knight Pulsar. Arise, Sir Pulsar. I don't think you can actually knight someone with a plastic katana. It is plastic, it won't hurt anyone. Anyway, Gabriel's hits brought Pulsar back to life to hit Gabriel some more. Pulsar indeed was on the attack as time ran out and the judges were called in, and the floor flipper tried to flip Gabriel. One of the hits actually sent a piece of Gabriel's tread flying very close to the camera. An alarming moment for anyone watching. The judges ruled in favour of Pulsar, sending them through to the grand final, where their first fight was against Flipper TR2 and Hammerbot Thor, wielder of a card of wildness. Pulsar went for Thor early on, but backed off, drove over TR2 and hit Thor, taking a bit of armour off before going back to TR2. Pulsar hit Thor again before going to TR2, who fed Pulsar to Shunt and left it alone. And Pulsar stopped, getting away just in time and ending up out of focus. And worryingly silent. Pulsar was still alive, and TR2 flicked it and sent it to Shunt, where it got axed, and Thor hammered Pulsar too. Shunt then righted Pulsar, and soon afterwards, Pulsar was no longer silent. That death hum fired up. But then Pulsar died for real. It got axed and hammered. And that was it for Pulsar in Series 8. There was no withdrawals to save them this time, no matter how much damage poor Thor took in the round robin stages. Pulsar returned for Series 9 of Robot Wars, landing in Heat D, where it drew Grab a Crustacean, terrifying horizontal bar spin at Apex, and, of course, Ironside 3. Oh, and Pulsar now had a self-writer. Apex naturally ended up being Pulsar's target, as it wasn't Ironside 3 and was still actually going. Pulsar was a bit late to enter the fray as Ironside 3 just went for Crustacean and just took it out in one blow. Pulsar's one hit took out Apex, so that got Pulsar through, just like, despite Pulsar getting too close to the floor flipper and taking an Ironside 3 hit. So, no need for any fire-breathing dragons. Pulsar straight through the round robin stages. And first up for Pulsar in the round robin stages was, well, Ironside 3, of course. The two robots avoided each other early on, Ironside 3 having to escape a shunt and briefly flying air floor flipper but landing on its wheels. Pulsar only managed to land a hit once Ironside 3 opened the pit. The two then danced around each other before trading blows. Pulsar tried to feed Ironside 3 to Secure, but Ironside 3 got free and Pulsar had a harder time escaping from the house robot. Pulsar's weapon was also off, and Ironside 3's weapon seemed to be having trouble. Anyway, Pulsar escaped and engaged Ironside 3 in a pushing war and won, sending Ironside 3 to a corner. Ironside 3 escaped though. Some more pushing wars ensued, nearly ending with Ironside 3 in the pit, but really ending with Ironside 3 getting away, its weapon recovering, and Pulsar down half its drive right outside Secur's corner. That's a bad thing. This is something that cannot end well. This time it ended with Secure picking up Pulsar, roasting it and dropping it. Pulsar self-righted and got away, but it took so long to do so. Happens when you can only crab walk. That Ironside 3 was able to cross the arena and deliver a few more hits. Pulsar then spun up the drum, moving intermittently, and then things got a bit confusing. See, the judges felt that Pulsar was immobile, started the countdown, and then realised, oh wait, Pulsar's not dead, and stopped the countdown. But the Ironside 3 team thought that Pulsar had been counted out immobile and backed off accordingly. The timer had not stopped for them. It had stopped for Pulsar, it had stopped for the judges, but not for Ironside 3. So they thought they'd won. Not helped by the fact that it was close to the end of the fight. The 3 minutes were nearly up, and Pulsar could only gyro dance. The time ran out and the judges were called in. Now, the judges, they watched through the fight, they found out the situation with the countdown, and realised that had a major effect on the fight. Ironside 3 may well have still attacked had they thought that Pulsar was still alive. As a result, the fight was ruled a draw, and both teams got awarded the 2 points for a judge's decision. I don't tend to mention this too much with the round robin stages in Series 8 and 9, but it was 3 points for a knockout, 2 points for a judge's decision. Next up for Pulsar was Horizontal Spinner Supernova. Pulsar had to have replacement speed controllers. Both machines spun up before coming to blows, Pulsar delivering a massive hit that sent Supernova halfway across the arena, and seemingly took it out, because Supernova was a bit stunned, but did manage to move forwards and backwards. Not completely unable to steer, but able to move forwards and backwards. The hit also seemed to take out Pulsar, but Pulsar drove over to Supernova, shoved it a few times, which took out Supernova for real, and waved its little self-righter to show it was okay. Comparatively. Though, by the way Supernova's, or not Supernova, or by the way Pulsar's self-righter was set up, it didn't look like a particularly polite salute. Let's just put it that way. Ah well. The crowd is also chanting Pulsar's name, which that must be nice for them. I don't think they'd chanted Pulsar's name before. Next up was Scoopbot Worm, and he had more technical issues. Worm actually shared something in common with Pulsar in that they too had entered the round robin stages late. But things weren't going as well for Worm as they were for Pulsar. Pulsar let out some ominous smoke early on, but still pushed Worm's scoop underneath it. Now Worm at this point, it originally had 4 wheels. During this fight it only had 2, and pushing the scoop underneath the wheels rendered Worm immobile pretty quickly, because with both wheels off the ground it could not move. It didn't help that Pulsar sent Worm to dead metal. Pulsar backed off and waved the self-righter again to say, yeah, okay, kind of a victory salute. But Pulsar did not last much longer than Worm did, and at the end of the fight, Pulsar's team captain was listing off technical issues that he could see with Pulsar. However, on the positive side, Pulsar was in the heat final again. However, on the negative side, to get into the arena for the heat final and being able to actually move, Pulsar went into the heat final without a functioning self-righter, as the motor used for it was used to help Pulsar, ended up being used to help Pulsar move. And that heat final was against, you guessed it, Ironside 3. Ironside 3's first hit took out half of Pulsar's drive. Pulsar tried to go in for an attack, but Ironside 3's second hit took out the rest of Pulsar. A third hit followed, and then came a barrage of hits, just to make sure. Once Pulsar was counted out, for realsies this time, so Killalot picked up Pulsar and Shunt gave Pulsar a bit of an axing. Of course, Pulsar was still in line for the wildcard for Series 9, and with 8 points, 2 knockouts and the draw, it had a strong case for the wildcard. If you've seen Thor's episode, Thor had 8 points, and it got the wildcard. However, Pulsar was in the robot equivalent of life support, which is a minus. It would have needed a miracle to be able to get back into the arena to fight. Note the amount of replacement parts they needed just to get to the heat final, which is also a minus. And also, one of the other wildcard candidates was Apollo, the defending champion. Pulsar did not fight Apollo. It was in the other group battle in the grand final, and did a different heat. Thus their paths never crossed. And Apollo was in a better state. It didn't need as much of a miracle to get back into the arena. So that was it for Pulsar in Series 9. Its team returned in Series 10 with, of course, a far more reliable Magnetar. Pulsar had reliability issues throughout its run, but when it worked, it was so lethal. I can imagine with those who are rooting for Pulsar, it's like rooting for someone who's inconsistent in a sporting event. You know what they can do when it all comes together, but it doesn't come together on a regular basis. It must be nerve-wracking. It's a shame that Pulsar never was quite the same after that supernova fight. It was a big hit, but it came at a big cost. In hindsight, looking at this 9 years later, I cannot begrudge them for taking the second chance they got in Series 8 and running with it. And running as far as they could with it. But, Pulsar, I was rooting for Ironside 3. Just full disclosure, not long before Robot Wars started up again in 2016, I'd been accepted for a master's course which was taking place in Nottingham, and the Nottingham connection was part of why I rooted for Ironside 3. Pulsar, I have since come to appreciate, but it was far too late for it. I wish Pulsar had been in a heat in which Ironside 3 was present. I'd say if only there was a more reliable Pulsar, but that was Magnetar, and I got to like Magnetar pretty quickly. In fact, Magnetar was my second prediction to win Series 10. That didn't go too well, but at least Magnetar won its heat. Pulsar, I'm sorry I didn't appreciate you at the time. You were a little bit fierce. And just as a note to end on, I did show a picture of Pulsar to a friend a few years back, and their response was, "No, it's so little." Strange that someone would think a fighting robot was adorable. So, who's next? Taiki? Please be kind. That was bad. Slipped right out my hand. Interstellar MML. Until next week, Carlson244 out.